Hello, everyone. My name is Shin Park. Today, I'm here to talk about the research side. So on your table, so you see a QR code and what's written there. Until there is a cure, there is research, right? So I'm gonna talk about the research. And then I'm also gonna specifically focus on the benefit of exercise, and especially John's session was great, and then we need to keep doing it in our lifespan, right? So exercise is so important. And how we can, if we have been inactive for a while, how we can build our routine again and then adhere to the routine, because uh, scientists say that it is important to adhere to our exercise routine for like a couple of decades to prevent diseases in our later life. So, okay, let me talk about this, and then before um, and then I try to make this not so boring, so stay focused. So how many centenarians do we have in the United States? Centenarians. So this statistics is showing that like back in 1950s, we had like the 2,300 centenarians, but researchers have shown that this is not so accurate. So maybe more accurate figure would be like 3,700 in 90s, which is more accurate figure. But in the last 3 decades, we had this number tripled. So right now we have a little more 100K, 100,000 of centenarians at this moment. But in the next 3 decades, this number is going to be quadrupled. That's a lot, right? So we estimate that this number is going to be quadrupled in the next 4 decades. See? Like 2050s, we're gonna have 420,000 centenarians in the United States. That's a lot, right? If we decompose this number, the vast majority of Americans in their 100s are women and white. Much small number of men live their life up to hundreds. And then if we look into the race and ethnicity, white people are the majority of those centenarians. Okay? And it's good to increase our lifespan up to hundreds, but I also need to talk about the health span, right? Because this statistics is showing that people live about a decades with disability. So on the left side, we have this global life expectancy and health adjusted life expectancy and health span lifespan gap. So look at the figure on the left side. We have the life expectancy has been increased from 2000 to like 2020 up to 75, but the blue line is showing health span. Health span has also increased, but the gap has been increased globally. When we look into the United States data on the right side, on the on the bottom, on the x-axis, we have years living with disability, and the United States is the number of people living with disability. It's much larger than some other countries. On the x-axis, there's a gap, health span and lifespan gap, which is like the years that people live with disability. It is also very large in the United States. If you see the figure on the right side, right? We need to work on this. And then if we can also see the differences between female and male. And then this is not the global data, but just the US data. The figure A shows the the changes of this health span and lifespan gap between men and women, and then the total in the US from 2000 to 2020, 2019. And we can also see that lifespan has been increased, but the gap between health span and lifespan has increased also. So we can see that the people live longer, but they live longer with diseases and disability. There is more, and then statistics is showing that men live shorter than women, and then also live with disabilities and diseases. In general, in average, right? Not everybody. And on the right side, it also shows the life expectancy between female and male. And then bottom, the dotted line is showing the health span. It's health adjusted life expectancy, which is also lower in male compared to female. Okay. So come on, guys. We need to work life, right? Yeah. So, so what we can do? Like we need to increase our activity for health, to increase our health span, right? So what's recommended by the national guidelines? This is the National Physical Activity Guidelines for older adults. What's recommended? At least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic exercise. If you do it in a vigorous intensity, such as like running, like 75 minutes per week is enough. But usually like the vigorous intensity is not so sustainable in older ages. So if you want to do the moderate intensity aerobic exercise, brisk walk or very slow jog, it's recommended to do it, continuously do it at 150 minutes per week. On top of this aerobic exercise, like John just taught us some strength training, at least 2 days per week of strength training and balance training, like standing with one leg or walking a little bit backwards. So challenging your balance is also recommended by the national guidelines. So aerobic exercise, not just walking, but also some kind of squat and strength training, and challenging your balance standing with one leg. These are all recommended by the national guidelines. If we look into the data, this is showing the percentage of US adults meeting these guidelines for both aerobic and strength training exercises. Between men and women, on the left side, we see men and women. We can see that adherence to these national guidelines steeply declines in midlife and older ages. At the time when the health benefit of exercise becomes pronounced. So when we need the most, we are not doing it the most, right? So physical activity and exercise is today's best buy in public health, which is the best medicine, but it's a tough sell to the general public. And older adults and midlife people's low adherence to these physical activity guidelines is a national problem. This is showing the estimate of a population-based population attributable risks of Alzheimer's disease cases. Then we can see that about 30% of Alzheimer's dementia cases attributable associated with physical inactivity, especially in the United States. There's a lot, right? So we need to increase our activities. Another reason, and then another researchers have shown that physical activity is protective factor for the prevention of dementia and Alzheimer's diseases. Systematic review and meta-analysis is considered as a kind of the robust, the most strongest research evidence. And then they compiled and analyzed a total of 58 studies. And then they provided the right axis is they compiled all those research findings, and then they concluded that physical activity, regular physical activity, not temporary physical activity, regular physical activity is associated with a decreased risk of all-cause dementia, RR 0.80, which means that 20% lower risk of having all-cause dementia if you regularly sustain physical activity. For Alzheimer's dementia, 14% lower, and the vascular dementia is 21% lower. And then neither baseline age or follow-up length or study quality affected this association. From a health psychology standpoint, psychologists have studied the affective determinants of physical activity adherence or behavior change. What I mean by that is affect, positive versus negative affect, whether you feel pleasure versus displeasure is a kind of the determinant for your behavior. Seems obvious, but let me explain this further. So if we have lived an inactive life, a single session of exercise at moderate or vigorous intensity gives us this pleasure, right? If you think about like that, if you have not exercised for a while, and if you go run up a hill or kind of the hike for like 30 or a couple of hours, definitely it is not pleasurable, right? If you feel displeasure in a single session of exercise, your hedonic responses to those episode or experience is more likely disliking rather than liking, right? If you dislike those experiences, you don't want to repeat it, right? It seems obvious. That's called hedonic motivation theory. So if you don't want to repeat it again, but rather you dread doing it again, so this routine is broken, and then because long-term physical activity is simply a repetition of single session of exercise, right? And then if this routine is broken, it leads to physical inactivity. So how we can work on this? Maybe we can make at least a single session of exercise more pleasurable. And then this is another data that my collaborator published. It shows the affective response to exercise vary by exercise intensity. Let me decompose this figure for you. So red is showing the below VT. VT is ventilatory threshold. So if it is below ventilatory threshold, it is considered as light intensity. And green is at the ventilatory threshold, which means the moderate exercise intensity. And then the blue is showing over ventilatory threshold, which is vigorous exercise intensity. We usually consider, like scientists consider the exercise at 3 intensities: light, moderate, and vigorous. On the y-axis, we have the feeling scale, which is a simple question: how do you feel at the moment? And then at the bottom of this slide, we have this scale from -5, I feel terrible. 0 is I feel neutral, and +5, I feel very good. And then this is a kind of the gold standard measure of affective response to exercise. We can see that when the exercise intensity is over ventilatory threshold, which is the blue line here, the feeling scale dramatically decreases, especially when the exercise is sustained at minute 10 and then 15. So it is important to make your exercise at least at moderate intensity. Light intensity exercise is also good, but moderate intensity is, as I just described in the prior slides, is the national recommendations. So if you have an exercise, don't do it at a vigorous intensity. And this is another data showing the affective response to moderate exercise intensity predicts physical activity behavior 6 months and 12 months later. So increasing the feeling scale just for 1 point is associated 40 minutes of more moderate exercise intensity 6 months after and 12 months after. This is another data. So I'd like to introduce the I-STEP study that I'm leading at my laboratory. So the goal of this I-STEP stands for Inspiring Seniors Towards Exercise Promotions. And then the goal of this study is testing the effects of different auditory cues on exercise adherence and affective responses in older adults who are at risk of Alzheimer's disease. And then the target population is preclinical without any neurologic impairment or functional impairment. Preclinical sedentary older adults with and without cognitive complaints. When I say sedentary here, which means that currently you are doing less than 60 minutes of moderate aerobic exercise and then having no strength training. And then regardless of cognitive complaints, you should be eligible at this moment. And then the intervention we provide, which is the exercise program, we teach brisk walk and slow jogging for aerobic exercise. And then we also teach strength training with and without different auditory cues. And then, yes, yeah, music. Yes, yes. Auditory cues music. So we provide, so half of the participants receive personalized music playlist. Then we ask the participants to exercise with those personalized playlists. And then we assess the primary outcome and secondary outcomes and then some mechanistic outcomes, which is the weekly volume of physical activity by wearing a waist-wearing accelerometer for 7 days every month. And then the secondary outcome before and after the 6 months exercise program, we assess cognitive function, motor function, and mental health using some surveys. And then we also, during the intervention, the 6 months exercise program, we send text messages and then respond to some of the text messages. For aerobic exercise at moderate intensity, we teach aerobic exercise at moderate intensity. And then instead of using heart rate, we use RPE, which is the ratings of perceived exertion scale, and also talk test. So when you're exercising at moderate intensity, you should be unable to sing, but able to speak with some pauses. So I said that exercise intensity is light, moderate, and vigorous. And then some easy discrimination of this exercise intensity is when you're exercising at light intensity, you should be able to sing. For example, walking. If you can walk with singing, which is considered light intensity physical activity. If you take a brisk walk, your heart rate increases, and then you should have some difficulties in talking, and then you should not be able to sing when you're taking a brisk walk, which is considered as moderate intensity exercise. If you exercise at vigorous intensity, you should not be able to speak. Okay. Think about it, you're like hiking a steep mountains. The conversation is not feasible, right? So we use the talk test and then the perceived exertion scale to prescribe and moderate intensity exercise. Then we also teach some strength training like John just taught us. So we use resistance band and wall and a chair. And then we teach straight leg raises, front, lateral, and back, and the knee raises for core exercise, lateral walk with some band, and then chair assist squat calf raises, deadlifts. I'm gonna show you some videos demonstrating this exercise in my lab. And then for upper body and core strength training, we do the wall plank, wall push-ups, wall sit, and some of the band exercises for the upper body. And then this is the procedure of the study. So once we recruit and then screen people for eligibility, we ask complete a lab visit for the baseline assessments, which takes about 3 hours. And ask the wearer that this is the waist wearing accelerometer on the right. So ask to wear the accelerometer for 7 days. And then we randomly allocate people into 2 groups, and then we provide the exercise intervention for 6 months. And then this 6 months exercise program have varied supervisions. We tape the in-person and virtual exercise session is tapered, which means that for the first 2 months, we provide exercise classes for 3 days per week. And then second 2 months, we provide 2 days per week of exercise classes. And then for the last 2 months, we just provide 1 day per week for the in-person exercise classes. And then the rationale for this tapering exercise supervision is because we want our participants to develop the independencies performing these exercise programs. Not dependent on our exercise classes, but growing independency is the key for this research program. So we taper the exercise supervision and then encourage participants perform these exercises on their own. And then after the 6 months program, there's another lab visit for 3 hours for post-test assessment. So this is some examples. Bias. Okay, so I don't think I can play audio here. Right, so this is audio is here. Right, so this is our participants, predominantly white female in our current participants. Yeah. So we are teaching squat to calf raises here. Then the next slide, this is some stepping exercise that they're doing. For side steps. Next slide. They're doing some jogging in place. Then we manipulate the tempo of the music playlist. So we increase the BPM of the music. BPM is the tempo of music, beats per minute. And then we gradually, progressively increase the tempo of music and then ask participants to step into those beats. So their feet stepping becomes faster. Gradually. And then this is the flyer. And you can email istep@emory.edu, or if you have a camera, you can just scan the QR code and then fill out the study interest form, or you can call this number and then leave a voicemail and then we will call you back. And then we also have a flyer, about 30 flyers that I gave to Crystal. And then we, after this, I have one more video to show you as a inspiration. They want to dance? So our program is not dance. We are trying to follow the national guidance system. It's similar to dance because stepping into the music is similar to dance. Could be. Yes.
Hey, Crystal's going to be sending you this actual flyer in your post-event email. But I think if you got anything today, it's like we want you to exercise more. And we're going to take some questions. So Dr. Trammell, John, and I have been talking about how we could have kind of like a stretch session over in the West End and maybe have a social hour afterwards at the brew pub. Would you guys be interested in that?
The stretch part. They want the brew pub, doc.
So here, Dr. Park wants you to sign up for this exercises. I know we're getting back into it, but you've learned about how we can do a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I'd like to conclude my presentation with this video. He's so inspirational guy. So look at this video for it's a 5-minute video, but I'm gonna stop after 2 minutes.
I'm George Rednoff, and I'm so happy to be here for another year.
This video is 7 years before. I think now he's maybe 108.
I think a lot of it is just willpower. You got to make up your mind to do it and do it. You have to discipline yourself. You have to do what you know you must do. I started, some 30 years ago, a daily exercise program before breakfast from 45 minutes to an hour. I go through some stretching exercise, a little bodybuilding, but mostly just limbering exercise. It it has to be a habit. You can't call it an activity that you'll get to. It's amazing how often you just don't feel very good in the morning when you start. By the time you get through with 45 minutes of this routine, you feel great. As you get older, very often you're just not enjoying life anymore, and you let problems overweigh the good things, and consequently, you're not happy. Now, if you can just get back to living again, that's important. And you have to push yourself a little bit to do this, but and you can't expect results overnight, and you may never ski as well as you did once before, but you can ski, and that's the important thing, is to keep at it, and don't get discouraged, just keep trying.
We're up here at yet another great year for George. 101 and a half. It's sun is shining. I mean, Alta couldn't be more beautiful, and we're actually having to hold him back. He doesn't want to stop. He doesn't want to rest. And I'm just happy to be here with him.
I was at one of the Wild Old Bunch dinners and I met this gentleman and he said he was 95. And I said, aha, that's a story.
We got a call from Harriet Wallace saying it's a gentleman, George Jednoff, who has an iPhone, still drives a car. He lives in the Bay Area, but, you know, grew up skiing at Alta and Snowbird, and I think he'd make a really cool story. And by the way, he's 95. We've been doing this ever since. Here we are. So we're gonna keep doing this till you're like 110. Does that sound good?
At least.
I don't know. This may be my last.
No.
I had more trouble getting started this day. Well, we'll see.
He's an optimist. He said, you know, I may be the most optimistic person you've ever met. He said, I'm 95 years old and I just bought a new pair of skis that'll last me about 10 years. And George is about 6.5 years into those 10-year skis right now.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if I bought another pair.
He is the utmost optimist. He is, the glass is always full. You know, he says, I never give up, you know, and he's able to put things into perspective. He's like a Zen master.
As you get older, your eyesight goes bad, your hearing goes bad, your plumbing goes bad. But if you can just keep vertical and keep moving and keep positive, that's the important thing. Keep positive.
Skiing with George, that 1 or 2 days a year we get to ski with him, it just has this impact on you that other days on skis do not have.
Make every day count and do something constructive. And the more you can do, especially for other people, the happier you are.
So, we're gonna allow you to ask Dr. Park a few questions, right? Bear in mind, this is your chance to interact with a health expert, to ask a meaningful question, not necessarily for divisive and controversial things, but one of our goals is to combat misinformation. So this is your chance to get your questions answered and share it. Share what you learn, right? Diffuse this information. So far, can I get a microphone with a battery? Right there. For me. Thank you. So far we've learned that stretching is good. That physical activity, of which stretching is is also good. It can protect your brain health, can also be beneficial to your mental health. Dr. Park and I are redesigning the Dementia 101 in a way that's going to be more impactful and informative to each of you. Now, as you ask your questions, keep them concise. Jarvis is ready to shut you down today. All right, so one question per person.
I've got a question. Over here, this side, this side. Dr. Park, a great presentation. Some of your data, one thing I was wondering, the numbers this shows for black males. Now, I was wondering if that involves single black males or married black males, because I've heard that, when you're married, your numbers are slightly better based on having a harmonious relationship. So I'm not sure if he did, a back and forth with just some males. And which
He
males?
keeps you breathing.
Long as that plumbing is right.
No controversy.
Good question.
Hey.
That's an excellent question.
Yeah.
Of course, I think lifespan and health span will vary by the marriage status and quality. I don't have the data at this moment, but yeah, of course, it varies by marriage status. It's a good point, though. Yeah.
Question over here.
This question is for Dr. Park and or Dr. Parker. In looking at the declining activity in men, is there a association with declining testosterone levels with age?
Yeah, that's a good point. Of course, definitely. Yeah, definitely. The vascular health and motor functional and like social status, those are all risk factors for decreasing physical activity. And then decreased physical activity also becomes risk factors for other chronic and neurodegenerative diseases.
As you get older, your testosterone levels do decline. Yes.
Yeah, is there a way to increase your testosterone as you get older? I think that's one of the questions he has.
But exercise is like strength training and aerobic activity increases metabolic and then vascular blood flow and vascular function, and then it can impact your testosterone as well.
Yes, it can. I'm not going to comment about supplements because that is not necessarily proven or studied. Now, I want to give you accurate information, but taking testosterone replacement therapy does have its benefits, not just on your physical health, but your mental health, because depression can occur when testosterone levels become low. However, I would only recommend that you do that with a well trained and well versed clinician in monitoring for some of the side effects that can occur with testosterone replacement therapy. We'll chat later.
I think the question about testosterone really has to do with your sex drive, libido, and ability to perform. If you've learned anything, however long you've been coming, exercise improves all of that. Okay. And one of the main risk factors for erectile dysfunction, ED as they call it, is poor blood flow. And the more you exercise, the better you improve your cardiovascular performance. You improve blood flow everywhere, including down there. Does that help? So what are you going to
do? Still don't know. Y'all looking around. You exercise, man. Eat more. Yeah, exercise. All right, you let's stand up when we ask our questions so that we know you're asking a question. Perfect.
Hey, Dr. Park, just a quick question. For your study, you said you needed to study sedentary, older, and if you were playing golf and practicing golf every week, does that make you active or you are still sedentary?
We receive a lot of those questions from our participants during the screening procedure. Yes, we recruit sedentary or physically low active people because we want to see the changes in their activity, which is our primary outcome. It depends on how you play golf. If you're in the cart, and then it depends on your like I said, maybe golf is definitely not strength training. So maybe you're good with that because we are looking for people who are not doing strength training. But for the aerobic portion, if your walking is at a brisk pace between the hole, and then maybe that is considered as brisk walk at moderate intensity, and then if it is over 60 minutes per week, maybe you're not eligible. So maybe our staff will have some conversation with you in terms of your specific activity.
Sir, sir. Also, if you are playing golf with a cigar and whiskey, that may counteract some. I'm serious. I'm serious. I have friends who have little attachments for their golf bags just to hold their cigars.
So thank you very much for this opportunity. I've been very sedentary, and I started looking for another place to live. I've been looking at Brazil and Portugal and other places around the world, and I'm looking at all these young ladies on the beaches, the eye candy. So I know I got to come see you and get my testosterone up. So, so look for my call. I'm looking for an accountability partner. Anybody else need to get moving? Holla.
Did you have a question or you just wanted to have a seat? Let me tell y'all something. Yeah. All right, we got a question right here in the middle.
It seems like he needs to get his expectations in order. But my question is, you started your presentation talking about people over 100. And I was wondering if that information is shared with the current administration who's trying to knock those people out of the Social Security system, because it says that there are not people who, as many people as you're suggesting, reach 100 or more. Just wondering if that information is shared.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe next year or a couple of years later, I will publish the findings. I'm not sure whether they're gonna read my papers.
Any more questions on this side? Questions on this side? We got one up there in the front, black hat.
Hi, for a person with limited breathing capacity, I've got serious COPD, so I don't exercise a lot. Is there some exercises, like I saw the ones from the chair? Is there a program for people with my type of disability for exercise?
We are not specifically looking into like COPD or lung issues at this moment. Gradually increasing your aerobic exercise intensity would be important. Maybe my job is to launch more research programs, and definitely people with COPD is one of the population that I'm looking for in my next study, but not for this study.
So, on that note, you ask a really good question. There are people who have certain medical conditions where maybe they can't do a whole lot of vigorous exercise. Okay, we went through stretching today, and I think that's something all of us can participate in. But if you have chronic lung disease or you have a heart condition, there is what we call cardiac and pulmonary rehab. They have an exercise kind of training program that is tailored for people with those specific disorders. And you kind of get that through the Department of Rehabilitation. Your provider does need to make an order and refer you to that program. But you ask a very good question. I have chronic lung disease. I have congestive heart failure. Can I exercise? The answer is yes, you can. And there are some very specialized exercise programs for people with those conditions, but you have to be referred to them by your doctor, your cardiologist, your primary care doctor, your pulmonologist. They can refer you to those, and we call it rehab.
You know what? This is the benefit of being able to ask experts questions, right? So when you have lung disease, you actually spend a lot of calories just on breathing, and it's hard to gain weight, right? So working with someone who can essentially teach you how to breathe with less oxygen is important for your long-term health, i.e. your survival, okay?
So Doc, are you saying if we hold our breath, we can lose weight? Is that will the stomach go? I'm just asking.
No, sir.
Never mind. I don't.
I'm not saying that. Next question.
Any more questions on this side? We gave y'all some barbecue and now y'all sleep. We going back to the couscous if y'all don't ask some questions.
No, you see, I don't think they remember. They're not thinking about anything else after Dr. Parker talked about the plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Heads got hung.
Well, they're friends. What they learned today, how to take care of the plumbing.
Plumbing.
That's
Mhm.
the take-home message. And that's okay because that's an important part of your health and well-being as you age.
So can we give a round of applause for Dr. Park? Great presentation. I'm sorry.
Sign up for the study.
We will have you sign up for the study. I think at this time, I do want to make sure you've got your agenda there. Next month, as Ms. Crystal has outlined, we're having our showcase. If you're interested in being a part of that showcase, we need you to submit your application by Monday. And if something happens after you submit that form and you just show up here next Thursday or next second Thursday, don't expect to be on stage. Just letting you know. And I think, Antoine, did you want to tell him something else?
She's gonna pull up the closing remarks slide.
Okay.
Yeah.